All right, everyone, welcome back to the Arlen Bystander podcast, this being our second installment. Tonight, myself, David Carr, and my lovely wife,
Carolyn Carr,
are going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 2 of King of the Hill, entitled Square Peg. This episode originally aired on Fox, as always, January 19th, 1997. Mm-hmm. So, let's start with you, Carolyn. What were some thoughts you had on this episode? We can get into some of the plot details of this wacky episode.
Yeah, I think starting off in the episode, it's really funny just to see Peggy, like, at her roots of, they kind of start to explain her career of being substitute teacher of the year 1996.
Very proud of that, yeah.
Yeah, and throughout the entire series, that's something that she prides herself on, is educating children, and she's...
Especially en español.
Yes.
Especiales.
Right. And, I
don't think that was correct Spanish, but
she doesn't have correct
Peggy
Spanish.
doesn't know español very well either.
Right. So, at one point, in the very opening scene, Hank is calling Peggy's name, right? And she's like, I'm in my office, and then it's a broom closet.
Yeah, and that's something that I always thought was funny. I know that there are others like Lady Bird likes to hang out there. I think later they had like a PC home computer in there, and Hank was always like derisive of like the internet browser and all that stuff. He always thought it was stupid. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in this episode, you certainly start to figure out more about Peggy's background as substitute teaching, and then of course. You hear more of some of the themes they had in the first episode, where this is a sexual education course that, according to Bobby, is from Washington D.C.
Yes,
maybe an oversimplification, but it certainly sends Hank up the wall.
Yeah.
They say that Bobby Hill is 11 years old. And I think they say he's in 5th grade. Mm-hmm. That sounds about right. I guess different states do it at different years.
And Peggy says, I thought that we'd at least have till he was in 9th grade.
Yeah.
For this to be brought up.
Yeah. So he goes to middle school, but he's in 5th grade. But different states do it different ways. Mm-hmm. It's not that implausible. And that would be Tom Landry Middle School, which I think is the first appearance of the name of it. Tom Landry, I believe, being the famous Dallas Cowboys coach.
Yeah, they start... Hank and Peggy are talking about how they don't want him to take sexual education courses,
right.
and he's like, Hank says something about that Bobby won't be having any sex, especially with someone with his features.
Yeah, and Hank makes lots of kind of mean remarks about Bobby in that show, but then you also kind of see that in this episode that Hank's father Cotton, he wasn't the best dad to Hank either. No. So maybe I'm not saying Hank's a bad parent, but I think certainly times where Hank is a little
lacking.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, you could say that. And Bobby, in regards to sex ed, he is a little worried about being a slut. That was something that had crossed his mind.
That's all he says when Peggy asks, like, what he knows about sex ed. He's like, I'm just a little worried about being a slut.
Oh my gosh.
But, he seems to know, like, certain basics, but, obviously Dale, the other, he's the only other parent in the group of
friends. Correct, with Bill and Boomhauer.
Yeah, and...
not having kids.
Joseph's the same age as Bobby.
Yeah.
So, they're both in the same boat. Like, Hank and Dale are in the same boat.
They agree with each other, but it's sort of like, once again, like, the two sides of the coin, where
right.
Hank... he rips it up, the permission slip, multiple times, but he rips it up and throws it in the trash can. But then, of course, Dale takes it a step further and leaves practically like death threats of sorts to the Hill resident.
Yeah, he calls and disguises his voice over and over, but then he'll end up having a conversation with either Hank.
But he's doing it to help them. He's doing it in his mind, for Hank, for Hank and Bobby.
And he talks about the bureaucrat regulatory handbook kind of dictating what the kids are learning about.
Yeah.
And once again, his conspiracy theory kind of personality comes through, and he talks about how the government's trying to push a zero population growth, of Americans so that the army can, like, we can't build an army or something.
Well, to him,
that.
it's like a Chinese conspiracy. Like,
Yeah.
the Chinese are going to come in.
Exactly. But you talked about basically all they
take
did.
them to the farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for young Hank Hill, and he didn't. I guess he didn't want Bobby to go through that, and he didn't know. He doesn't want the bureaucracy in the schools teaching sex ed, but he doesn't feel comfortable teaching it himself.
Yes,
and he doesn't want Peggy teaching it either.
Yeah, his solution. Well, because Peggy and Hank kept pushing it off on each other, and then his solution was to go to like a cattle place and watch artificial insemination of cows,
which was dumb because it seems like it was kind of similar to like what Cotton did.
Right. And so then they basically, Hank and Peggy just decide, you know what, forget it, we're just going to let the school teach Bobby because we don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And then I guess who was it that talked about the right-wing maniac calling the school? They called the health teacher and gave like a death threat. Or
well, that was Peggy, because I guess initially Dale was the right-wing maniac and he was leaving it to the original health teacher.
Dale was the one who did it,
yeah.
But Peggy was the one who found out about it via phone call from the school.
Which leaves the opening for Peggy to be the sex ed teacher.
Mm-hmm. And so she starts rehearsing, or she was talking to Luann about it, and Luann was just, because she was looking through like the sex ed book, mortified about everything inside it, and Luann is sitting there at the table with her, and she kind of starts rattling off things from the book, and Peggy says, Luann, what is it like to live without shame of any kind? And Luann, I don't know, she says something about she likes it. And, you know, Luann is, as we discussed last episode, she's like a simple character. She's
down to earth.
She's very, yeah. The things that are kind of ridiculous about her are also like really nice qualities too, because she is down to earth and she's in a way stabilizing, as unstable as she is. She kind of, because she looks at things kind of as they are, she brings a good perspective to different situations.
And she's helpful. Like, she tries to help out Peggy. She tries to help out Hank once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's some great dialogue from Bobby in this, but you start to see more of just the odd personality that he has.
Straight faced, but saying really weird things.
I think Bobby takes more after Peggy than he does Hank, which is, I think, source of maybe some of the frustration that Hank has in this series.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that Peggy's a little out there, and so is Bobby.
Yeah, and Bobby telling Joseph, "I'm not gonna need my toys anymore. After I take sex ed, I'll be busy dating."
Yeah. So he has like, what were they, like Friends action figures?
He had a Chandler
dolls?
and a Chandler doll and a Ross doll from the show Friends.
And then Joseph, he offers them to Joseph.
Oh. Joseph probably being more awkward than Bobby.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I like this one. I said this in the beginning, but how it introduces Peggy as a sub. And one recurring theme throughout the show is that Peggy acts like she's so noble because she's the substitute teacher.
Oh yeah.
And
noble and knowledgeable. When I mean, it was nice of her to help out the school and teach the sex ed. So I think this episode portrays Peggy in a fairly positive light.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she's trying to do the right thing, and I mean, they both admit, like, you see their backstories and how their parents were kind of useless.
Yep, you
and,
see
like,
Peggy's mother in the flashback.
Yeah, so, like, she says at one point in the episode that she doesn't want Bobby to be in the dark about, in so many words, she says, like, clueless about things that they were clueless about growing up.
Yeah.
And, it kind of cuts to Peggy rehearsing what she would decide to talk to the students about in front of Luann. Mm-hmm. And Luann is an active listener. And so, then Peggy finally kind of gets more confident with using terminology that makes her uncomfortable. And Hank overhears her shouting these, body parts out loud.
Yeah.
And he refers to them as cursing.
This is why are you cussing?
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think, and Hank becomes kind of just distraught over the fact that Peggy is becoming more confident, and then Bill is talking about, oh, it must be nice to be with a woman who knows.
Bill's great in this episode. I think they didn't develop Bill much in the pilot, but you start to see like the real Dautrieve.
Yeah.
Even his hair, like his character models, is more like the classic Bill Dautrieve. He's great, and I think Bill does have a crush on Peggy. I think that is expanded upon later in the series.
Yeah,
they're sometimes a bit vague about the high school backstories of the adult characters.
Yeah.
I think that was the thing. Well, we can one day we might get to those episodes that
we could go on a whole tangent on that one.
Yeah. But also, Peggy doesn't have her social circle as much as in these episodes. I think in later episodes, she hangs out with Luann. She hangs out with Nancy. She hangs out with Min, who's not introduced
Khan's
yet.
wife.
Yeah, Khan's wife. And Cotton's new wife. She kind of confides in her. So it's like a bit of she has like a bit of a friends group of sorts.
And they all can.
But she doesn't have that in this would suffer for her.
Right, because they all live in the same vicinity, so they always see each other all the time.
Yeah.
Not Cotton's wife, but the other, basically the parents, like Connie's mom and stuff like that. So, yeah, she doesn't really have anyone to talk to about this the way Hank does. And, you can see how Hank is a major prude in this episode.
Sure. Yeah.
And he gets so angry at Peggy that he ends up finding the loophole and telling Peggy, well, the permission slip says that both parents need to approve, so I'm not approving. So he takes Bobby to work with him.
Hank always knows what the rules are.
Yeah.
He's by the book.
Exactly. So he takes Bobby to work with him so that he doesn't have to be exposed to the sex ed stuff.
Yeah, first appearance of Strickland Propane. You don't meet Hank's boss or any of his coworkers. It's just, but it's a funny scene of him just trying to quietly work at his desk. One thing that I thought was interesting, I don't recall this being prevalent in too many other episodes, was that they're driving, I think, to Strickland Propane after Hank pulls Bobby out of school from sex education, and they drive past a Dairy Queen, which I'm familiar with, obviously, and I wanted to say, I think it's a Whataburger logo. So legitimate, fast food brands. It was interesting I don't think they did a whole lot of that in King of the Hill.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it was paid product placement. I think it was just, they might have a lot of those in suburban rural Texas,
Yeah, I agree with that.
And one other thing that's funny about this episode, as well as the first episode, is the prevalence of Bobby playing organized sports. He's playing Little League baseball, whereas in the future, Bobby knows to not bother with that. He gets involved in maybe, I think, like the cheering and all these other.
Yeah, he's as we talked about,
helping out the team.
Yeah, being more like Peggy. I think he's more just kind of eccentric, and he does things that Hank doesn't want him to do, and the girls, I think he gets along with the girls really well, so he likes to do those sorts of things. But basically, then after that, Hank kind of has a little conversation with Bobby at his job, and he realizes, you know what, like, because Bobby says something about, I'll never have sex, isn't that what you want, or something, and Hank's like, no. So Hank takes him back to the school and kind of makes this heroic entrance into Peggy's classroom, because Peggy's been stalling, so she doesn't have to teach her kids sex ed. She's like, my name is Mrs. Peggy Hill. You can call me Mrs. Hill.
Me llamo Peggy Hill.
Right. Mrs. Peggy Hill. You can call me Peggy. Like, she's just wasting time. And they walk in. Bobby takes the seat. And then she kind of gets the confidence to speak about what she's there to talk about. And then she says, okay, we'll bring up your permission slips, from the parents. And if you don't have permission, then you can go to the library and read for an hour. So it turns out that the entire class, except for Bobby, had permission. So in the beginning, they were kind of pushing the responsibility of teaching sex ed to Bobby. Hank and Peggy were pushing it on each other, like, because neither of them wanted to do it. And then at the end, she had to do it anyway, so that's kind of like the interesting circle back to the beginning.
Yep, I would agree with all that. I think it's certainly a great episode for... it's a very great early Peggy episode.
Mm-hmm.
As well as you get to see Bobby more hang out with his friend Joseph. They're always funny together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And you can see just some early introduction of, all the Strickland propane stuff. So I think it's a very good follow-up episode. I saw pretty much all the episodes of the show out of order for the most part. Just whatever was on TV or a DVD set. But, yeah, if I was back, watching this with the second episode aired, I would enjoy it. I would think, this helped explain, some more of the show. So I think certainly the show, at this point, had gone 2 for 2. Mm-hmm. It's another very good episode.
And I think it shows that they're like a solid American family. I mean, they're all trying to do the right thing, and Bobby, I like the fact, like, Bobby's not a perfect son, but he does want to respect his parents' wishes. Yeah. And I think that's kind of
at least in this one,
no, I mean, he's
a jerk in the first episode.
Oh, yeah, this is
and
more
Joseph.
Like, this is more like the real Bobby.
Yeah, the real exactly. The real Bobby Hill, and you get to see more of the real, somewhat of the real Peggy Hill. I think her character changed quite a bit.
Between episode 1 and pilot in this.
Yeah, and also as the show went forward, I think Peggy became a very funny character, one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, Peggy's hilarious.
On the show. There are a lot of episodes where it really can be like a Peggy-centric episode, and it's just hilarious.
It is.
The craziness that she gets into,
And she, honestly, too, in a lot of the episodes like this one, when they're in the bigger groups of people, like at the sports games and stuff, it does show, like, all of the parents seem to know each other. Like, they all know who Peggy Hill is. They all know who Hank Hill is.
Yeah, everyone kind of knows everyone. They see each other, like, the gas station.
Yeah, like, even the community. Like, characters, you don't even know their names. They still know who Hank and Peggy are.
Right. And in the other episodes, there are, like, more, like, extras, just, like, random parents and stuff. But then later, you start to meet, have more, like defined people that they could kind of bounce dialogue off. Peggy with her kind of pseudo-social circle that she has.
Yeah, like, some of these women are just... Some of the women that were talking to Peggy looked so poorly drawn and, like, just thrown together. Like, they were just putting a face on a voice.
I think that improved dramatically, even probably the second season onward, maybe even some of the episodes in the first season.
Yeah.
But, this is a good one. I think at this point the show was certainly going 2 for 2. This was another very, very funny episode.
And it ends also with Dale calling again after everything's said and done. He still is calling the house and disguising his voice and, like, making threats or comments, and then he ends up talking to Hank in his non-disguised voice, but showing how relentless Dale always is.
For a tea time, and I don't think they
go golfing.
Not often. Probably a few times in the show, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
But they like sports. Golf is a sport, so there you go.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. So I think it's a great episode. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think this is a really good Peggy introduction.
Yeah. Certainly introduced like a sort of deeper development of the Peggy Hill character, who, as before, is, I think, one of the absolute best characters on the show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and with that, we will wrap things up. I hope, as always, that it was entertaining and enlightening.
Bye.
See you next time.